Hey, this is Nicolosi. Mela 7.1 is coming soon, and it will introduce a new module collection, Collection 5. And of course, it will bring new modules. And I thought I'd create sneak previews to showcase them. And in this video, we're going to focus on the frequency shifter. Okay, let's get into it. Here I have Logic Pro running on my macOS. I have multiple tracks, so we can process different types of sounds through our frequency shifter module. On the first track, I have Mela inserted as an instrument, and I have VA oscillator with the sinusoid loaded, and its output is going through our frequency shifter module. I'm also going to open Logic Pro's channel EQ so we can look at the spectrum. So, what is a frequency shifter? Frequency shifter processes audio signal by shifting its partials or harmonics by a fixed amount. It differs from pitch shifter, which shifts all harmonics by multiplying their frequency by a fixed number. So if you pitch shift a signal up an octave, their frequencies will double. With a frequency shifter, you are adding a fixed hertz amount to each partial. Okay, so let's observe how our sinusoid transforms. And at the moment, its shift is set to 0%, so it will not change the sound until I adjust this parameter. So it's quite simple. As we saw, it simply shifted the sinusoid up and down the spectrum. And next we have this range parameter, which sets the maximum amount of shift that will be performed by the shift parameter. So when it's 100%, it will be shifted up 500 hertz, and when it's negative 100, it will shift down partials by 500 hertz. And we can set a range to different amounts depending what kind of effect we want. And all this shifting is done linearly, except with cubic, which has a cubic shape and gives more exponential feel to the sound. Let me show you. And then we also have this stereo toggle. What it does is that when it's enabled, it shifts left and right channels in opposite direction. And the mix parameter, if you want to blend with a dry signal. Okay, so let's focus now on the mode parameter. You may have noticed that when I shifted down sound, it disappeared. And let's try that again. Watch what happens as I shift down. The frequency of C3 is around 265 Hz. When it's negative 300 or 400, the sound will disappear completely. And this is probably the behavior that you expect. But there are other modes. For example, reflect. You may be aware that digital audio signals contain negative frequencies. And it's a mirror image of positive frequencies, and usually you don't have to think about it. But in some cases, like with a frequency shifter, when you adjust the sound, positive ones could be shifted into negative, and negative partials could be shifted into the positive spectrum, and that affects the sound. With clean mode, none of that happens. But with reflect, what will happen now is that if I shift it down and goes down below 0, the negative frequency ends up coming into positive. In other words, the partial ends up reflecting back. As you saw, our sinusoid was reflected back. Now there's this other mode, duplicate. Now what this does is that if I shift our sinusoid high enough, its corresponding negative frequency will end up moving into positive range. Because this has 265 Hz, its corresponding negative frequency is 265. So if I shift it up anything higher than 265, it will come into positive range. Okay, let me demonstrate. As you saw, we ended up with two sinusoids. That's because the sinusoid with the negative frequency, the partial with the negative frequency, came into the positive range. Now that we saw how the frequency shifter parameters transform sinusoid, let's try something more complex, like a sawtooth waveform. As discussed, what will happen is that the harmonics of the waveform will end up shifting by a fixed frequency amount, which means it will start to sound inharmonic as shifts increase. Let's try it. Also, if we want to get like a chorus sound, we can choose a low range, like 5 Hz, and then mix it with a dry signal. Okay, now that we understand how frequency shifter works, let's try applying it to different kinds of sounds. And I'm just going to tweak the parameters, and you can listen how it transforms pads and then drums. Okay, that's all for now. I introduced the frequency shifter module in this video, and there will be more videos showcasing modules coming in Mela 7.1. Thank you, and see you next time.